Niaje wadau, hope mko poa. I hope you are good. I am good too. Hata mimi niko poa, sina ubaya. Uh, Today I want to talk about the story of the beginning, concerning Adam and Eve. So this story has always like perturbed me. Like it is somehow confusing. I'll tell you how. Um, well, you find that God created all things, and God created the enemy, right? Um, the enemy used to live in heaven till corruption was found and was expelled from heaven. Number two, God created man after he had created or formed the earth and everything in it and heavens, and he put man in the garden to tend it. But man was incomplete, or probably as it is also written, that man was sad and unhappy, right? He lacked something. Though everything was created for him and he was put in charge of all things, land, of the plants, of the fish of the sea, yet he was unhappy. So God looked upon man and said that I'm a create for you and helper, someone right for you, right? Someone who will suit you. And that is because also that you find that there was no other creature like man. Every other creature probably had another creature resembling, or probably they were creatures. But man, there was no other man. He was just by himself, and so he was lonely. So God, like in the second account, puts him to sleep and removes out of him a rib. And also, I don't know whether the removing of the rib is symbolic of something, or probably it is actually what God did. I will not say. I will probably think it is symbolic, right? Because people, our scientists, are trying to say that they are counting the ribs of men and women, but it is also documented that there is no difference in ribs, probably. Yeah. So it is written that God removes a rib from a man, and out of the rib creates a woman. Well, you see, the Bible is a translation. So I don't know exactly. Probably it could be meaning something else. Probably it could be just referring to how God created another being, right, from man, another being that is in resemblance to the man he had created. So that when Adam was patched up and he woke up and he saw her and he said that she is flesh of his flesh, bones of his bones, and he was happy, right? Now he had someone whom he could relate to, whom he could share with. But that doesn't end there, right? So you find that this woman that God created for Adam also led to his downfall, right? Okay, let me not put it like that, but after he was created, something happened so that Adam was expelled from the Garden of Eden. So you find that on that day when Eve was roaming at the forest, and the evil one came and tempted her, and she fell into the trap of the enemy, right? Because also the enemy said that God does not want you to eat of that tree of knowledge because he does not want you to know or be like him. And God had told Adam and Eve that on the day when you shall eat from that tree, you shall surely die. And probably Adam and Eve were meant to live forever, I don't know. But we all know that people die on that day, right? You see, it is written that God said that on that day you shall die, right? But of course, we know that Adam and Eve did not die on that day when they ate. But to God, they did. You see that it is written that 1,000 years is like one day to God. You see that God never ages. He is eternal. And probably if 1,000 years is like one day to God, then to God probably they died on that day. Right? Because even though they took 900 years or 700 years in their lives, yet to God that is nothing. Right? To God it's as though they died on that day. Right? Yeah, so we tend to believe that since Christ died 2000 years ago and rose to life, that he has been away for 2 days. We would probably say that. And that he would come back on the third day. Probably, I don't know, in the years of 3000. I don't know, probably. Yeah, we would purport that. Because also, the number 3 is essential. Even as Jesus died and rose on the third day, probably he would come on the third day, the 3000 year day. Anyhow. So, when Satan tempted Eve and Eve fell for the snare, for the trap, and she ate. And because she ate, corruption was found in her. And she took that fruit to Adam. Well, I don't know if you were Adam what you would have done, right? This is your wife. And she is convincing you that this fruit is actually very nice, right? You find that at that moment, it is not the enemy, or probably the enemy has spoken to Eve, and Eve now is speaking to is speaking to Adam, and Adam listens to his wife, and they are in agreement, and he eats of the fruit, and because he ate something that his wife brought to him, then corruption was also found upon him, and God came and judged them. Well, people say that Adam fell and was expelled from the garden because when he was asked about the fruit, he blamed it on Eve, right? But I will probably disagree with that. You see, man is man, and the woman is the woman. You will not say that man is better than the woman in such a way that it was wrong to say that it was Eve who had caused him. That was true actually. It was actually Eve who had brought the fruit to him, and he ate. Well, she was his wife. They were in agreement. But probably, I will not say that was the reason. Saying that the reason why Adam and Eve were expelled, or probably Adam was expelled from the garden, it was because he blamed it on Eve and he did not take the blame upon himself. No. I don't think so. Probably the main cause why they were expelled from the garden is because God was trying to save them from themselves. You see, Adam and Eve were a creation just like any other. They were not God, they were not angels in heaven, though angels also did fall. Like, only God is God, right? They were just creations in the image and likeness of God, right? But God saw that they were limited. Even though God did trust them by his word and told them not to eat, but then they still ate, right? So it is not that it is because Adam blamed it upon Eve and that is why they were expelled, but it is because they were just human. God saw that they were not able to keep themselves from sinning or from eating that fruit, right? So he had to remove them, right? Because they had fallen short, right? They were short of their ability. And so we will also say that God still created humanity, even though humanity fell into sin continually. And so why did God create humanity? Well, it is also written that God has given us free will. I don't think God created us to fall, right? Though we say that God knows all things, but I also think that even though God knows all things, that he created mankind in his image. And that also means that mankind has got power to choose, right? Mankind is not like an animal, right? He is godlike. He has got power to create. Mankind has got power to will. He can will by himself and do, right? And for that reason, so you cannot say that God like created mankind so that he will never sin, because God created mankind in such a way that he could choose to do wrong or right, right? You see, animals don't know right from wrong. They are like programmed to be the way they are. They're just animals. But man is different, right? Man was made in the image and likeness of God. Man has the ability to will and to choose. So God created man, and man was left to reproduce, to create, right, and to expand, so that if he would fall, he will choose. If he will follow the right or the wrong way, he will be able to choose that, right, by his will. He will be able to will to do that, right? So it is not that God created man to fall, but you see that God is continually telling man to follow his ways, right? Because man has got the ability to choose and to do right. Even as the enemy is there, the enemy makes it hard, but the grace of God also is there for us, and God is there for us if at all we accept Christ, and the Holy Spirit is going to be with us in our lives, helping us, right? Though we fall, the Lord is able to uplift us with his righteous right hand. So God was simply trying to save man from himself, because if man now ate from the tree of knowledge, he will also again eat the fruit of life. Well, that could be complicated. I don't know the intent as to why. You probably ask why God put man in the Garden of Eden, right? And still the enemy was there. And there was also the snare of the fruit of life and the fruit of knowledge. I would probably tend to think as though God continually creates man to continually like improve. Like he's probably continually testing man, right? He did not create an absolute man, right? A man that was without blemish. He created man in his image, which means that he created man power to be himself and to be herself, right? So to make choices, right? To will, to create, and that is how probably right. So that means that man also could fall, and man could walk in rightness, and that is why God is able to judge man, because he has given him the power to choose and to will for right and wrong. But I don't think there is judgment for animals. Yeah. Right, yeah. So and also there is no redemption for animals. Like when you go to heaven, animals are just probably meant for the earth, right? They're just there, but it is man. So you see that man is different. And though man continually falls, so it's not that God meant man to fall, but God created this creature that is unique, that has got power to choose, power to create, right? It's different from the animal. So also God was looking upon man, you see. So God creates this man, and also God is looking upon this man, what he will do. In the same way also, whereby if you created something today, you did not create it for it to fall, right? You created in your heart with all perfectness for it to work. But also the creation has got its own route, has got its own way and path. So you also, as the creator, looking upon that creation that you have made, right, and expecting it to work in all rightness. And sometimes the creation is imperfect, and the creation falls, right? But from the beginning, you did not create that creation to fall. And though God knows all things, but God does not like restrain your thoughts, right? He does not put you to bondage, like you cannot go this way or this way. He has given you free will, right? Though he might know what you're thinking or where you might be, but it is not like God has constrained it, that this is the way that you must go, unless it is for some will that there is a purpose you ought to fulfill, right? So you see, you must say that if God knew man would fall, when did God create man, right? Well, God created man and gave him chance, gave him power to do right or wrong. So God continually looks upon man and continually expects man to do rightness and to avenge evil. And it's also all for the glory of God, right? God created all things for himself, for his glory. So you cannot say that God did something wrong to do that. It is all for God. It is all for his glory that he created man and set man on earth, right? So it is all for his own liking, right? So you cannot say that God is wrong to do that or God would not have done that. The thoughts of God are not our thoughts, neither his ways are our ways. Who can fathom, right? So if you're trying to understand, stop trying to understand. It is who he is. God is he. It is him. He is supreme. He is all powerful. All things are to his glory, right? Yeah, whether good or bad, it is for his glory. It is written that God has created the good and the evil for the day of evil, right? Yeah. So God is who he is. He is righteous. He is perfect. He is right in all he does. Right? So it is not about us. Right? It is about him. So God chose to task Adam to work. Well, probably because he also saw that if Adam does not keep busy at work, then this thing could keep on happening, right? And it also applies today with man and woman. Whenever the woman is trying to look after the man, there is evil, right? So God has mandated man to be the one to work, right? And to be the one to provide, also to keep out that scenario, right? So you find that probably man was created first by God, and then woman created from man. So man had got to be the one, right, to lead, right, for rightness. So we find that in the order of God, right, man was tasked to work so that he will stop being prone, right, to this provision of his wife that will lead him to evil or to falling. So man was tasked to work and till the ground, and the woman was bound to the man, right? So probably because God saw that if the woman is not bound to the man, the woman is prone to fall into the hand of the enemy, and the enemy will use the woman against the man, right? So it also applies even today. Whenever the woman disregards the man, the enemy is able to find way to the woman, right? So it is actually as though it is a man who takes care of his family, and in so doing, if that rightness stands, then it is also quite possible to keep the enemy out of that household, right? Yeah, and also since it is the way that God put it, whenever the right way is followed, then the way of the enemy is shunned. And we tend to be living in a time whereby we are like getting back to the first days, right? And even as it was written that in the last days evil shall abound, and because evil shall abound, the love of many shall run cold. So you find that you're going back to the first days whereby the enemy has convinced the woman against the man, right? So the woman has disregarded the man, hence the enemy has found way to the woman, right? And now the woman is bringing on corruption to the household. And that's actually it. And as man, we ought not to complain about our struggles, because it is as though by our struggles it is the redemption of the household. So you find that it is not the woman that was charged for the toiling, right? Though the woman today works and is able to earn, right, probably more than the man, but it is the rightness. Like when man toils, even though man might not be earning much, but that is a righteousness. Even though we come at the table and the woman provides 100,000 and the man provides 10,000, that which is of the man is more righteous, right? It holds more weight. It's like a sanctifier, right? It is more weighty, that which is of the man, because the man was the one who was charged for the toiling, right? So we as men, we ought not to say that we are suffering, that the woman is earning too much, that the woman is privileged. No. You find that it is not the woman who was charged to toil, it is us. So the striving that we are striving and the little that we are able to earn, it is in righteousness. Right? And when we bring that to the table, we ought not to feel inferior to what the woman is earning, because that is not a charge of the woman. The charge of the woman actually was for child pain in birth, and she was bound to the man, so that even though she felt pain at childbirth, she would still want to be with her man, right? But we were the ones who were charged to toil and to till the ground and to sweat, right? So whenever we are toiling and sweating, right, and struggling, it is not that it is a wrong thing happening to us, but it is a righteousness, right? So that even though we are finding something small, and though the woman is finding that large chunk, it is not in wrongness. It is not like something that we feel that it is wrong, because even that small thing, because it is that man that has provided it, that small outweighs that big chunk of the woman, right? Yeah, so let us stop blaming the woman for her success. Let us stop feeling inferior, right? As long as we are working in rightness, as long as we are doing our part to toil, right? Though the woman might acquire what she acquires, right? Though the woman might earn much, but that does not disregard what we are doing, right? Because it appears as though that has been said by God, that we struggle. And I want to tell you something. On the day that as a man you stop to struggle and the woman starts to take care of you, right? Then the manness in you will start to deplete, right? Yeah, that is actually what it is. So let us not feel inferior. That's because the woman is earning much. Let her earn what she will earn, right? If she's able to, well and good. But let us also do our part, right? And do what we do. And that little we are able to earn, because it is of righteousness. And when we bring it to the table, whether the woman has brought 1,000,000, whatever we have brought, that it is of a righteousness. And to the eyes of God, it is good, right? It is good. And as women are probably, let not the enemy fool that just because you are earning much and you're able to do much more than your husband or the man, that you overrule him. Because on the day when you do that, then you are granting the enemy the chance. And that is the beginning of downfall for that household. So, as men, let us not feel inferior just because we are earning little and you're toiling much. And the women, even though you are earning much, do not disregard the man. Because all this seems to have been said by God. Right? There's no wrongness to it. So anyhow, it was true that it was Eve who gave Adam the fruit. Right? For what would you have done anyhow? If you are you anyway. But anyhow, that was true. But I don't think that was the reason why. Right? It was the truth. It was probably because God had seen that man is imperfect. Right? That man was prone to fall. Right? Out of the word of God. And so God had got to move him away from that place, lest there be more harm. Right? Yeah. So anyway, they all had their own portion. Also the enemy was to be struck in the head. And that is another controversial issue. Right, so you might be saying that it is the actual serpent. But the serpent, other people say that probably could be symbolic, right? So you see that God charged the serpent that he will be without arms and legs, that he will crawl upon his belly. And that is controversial, right? Because we know the actual serpents today, the actual snake, right? So whether it is the actual snake or the enemy, whatever it is, well, we all have partaken in our own part. So God still redeemed Adam and Eve by removing him from danger and saving him from himself. So anyhow, Till next time, peace. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. Thank you.